Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 37 of IGEL Weekly. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got Chris and Seb with me. Chris, I'm watching you on the camera. You're getting your additional Christmas decorations. Seb showed up with his hat on, his Christmas tree hat. I think it is a Christmas tree. And then Chris had to go get his bar French.
I got everything. I got the Woody wagon with a little shout out to our friends in Munchen. Well, nice. I think I picked that up when I was over there in Germany at one point. So
when you ordered some water, right?
When I ordered some water.
You guys should create a Christmas version of Hedgie and send out to your customers. That'd be a
oh yeah. Well, or a Lego version. You can just sort of change the colors on this guy.
Yeah.
So.
Well, for our listeners, Chris is actually showing us stuff, and my son, the intern, which is one of the reasons why I'm late this morning getting started. Listeners don't know that, but you guys do. And it's really my fault, not theirs, but it did complicate things a little. They're here posting our videos. So all the podcasts for the last year or so have a video piece of it that are now going on the XenTegra YouTube channel. So all the little visual things we've been doing start to become a little more relevant.
Awesome.
Perfect.
I look forward to that. I have a youngster who just finished college last week. So he's kind of in the interviewing, sort of preparing things. So I'm like, all right, well, maybe there's opportunity for him to get some experience while he's waiting for that big interview with he studied intel and security. So he's kind of looking at like military intelligence, that type of thing, federal type stuff. So. But those things aren't.
So not cybersecurity or cybersecurity?
Not right now. He didn't go and study, cybersecurity specifically, although they definitely touched on that in his studies. But that may be ultimately a path that, for his career.
Yes, I was just talking to my son out in the hallway while I was waiting on my daughter to bring the keys to my office to give you a little more insight into what just happened. And we're talking about what he wants to do. I've got him taking a bunch of certifications because that helps XenTegra and gets them exposed all at the same time, helps them build up our partnership status with different vendors. And I'm trying to fish out of them what they want to do. Of course, they're freshmen in college, so they got a while. But I'm trying to find out, and I'm implying to them, do what you want to do, but get into the key parts of technology like cybersecurity, and you're going to make money for at least a little while, if not forever. I made a joke about parks and recreations as an example, which is no joke to anybody who's doing it. If it's what you want to do, it's what you want to do. But I also told them, go make some money in technology, and you can organize groups to go help the national parks or state parks. You can find a way to do both. Follow your passion, but also follow the money.
There you go. So, yeah.
Or you could be like Seb and you could follow your passion and the money all at the same time.
That's even better.
Be passionate with your money.
Hey, you know what I'll say for the three of us, I think knowing the three of us, I think we've done exactly that, right? We're doing something we find exciting and getting energized to get up every day and do, including technology podcasts like this. And we also make a living doing it. I think that's something to be thankful for.
Oh, yes. Doing something that I was doing as a hobby when I was extremely young. I can just say that I'm extremely thankful for everyone who gave me the chance to work in that area without having studied, etc. Because that's something which is not such common in Germany or in France. So that's something where I'm extremely thankful for all the people who enabled me to do that. But it's definitely fun. And I'm doing some work without that. So I'm really enjoying it.
So Seb, you're trying to say you can't do it alone, right? You gotta follow your head and your heart, and you also need a little help and some friends, which, for a lot of people, that networking, that human networking element of all this is probably something that's woefully overlooked and is not a trivial thing.
And don't be worried to make mistakes, because that's something that will happen by its own. So don't be worried. Just make that mistakes and learn from it.
Yeah.
Right. As long as those mistakes don't take down the internet. So. What? I shouldn't have been through that DNS change.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a really good segue. Seb, today we wanted to talk in the spirit of holidays, in the spirit of careers, in the spirit of helping people get connected with each other, the IGEL community, and the latest with the community in terms of updates. Did you have something specific to share for a visual, or do we want to just talk through it?
No, we can definitely go do the visual and speak about that. So I'll just share my screen. If you would make me to a moderator role, that would be perfect. I just made, let's say, I prepared some retrospective, Chris, for what the Azure community, what we did also with XenTegra this year, and just covering maybe something that people are not knowing from our audience. Because if you think of the Azure community, you might think of asking a question and getting an answer. That's right, and that's definitely a huge part of our daily business. But I added some value to that, and that's something that I will just bring us through. Just a short presentation, not 35 slides, just 6 in a row, with a few figures and numbers report that I did for our today's podcast. So we'll just start the screen sharing and the presentation mode. So you should see now the presentation and not the presentator mode, right?
We see the presenter mode, but it doesn't matter. For the sake of this,
okay,
it doesn't matter.
We can definitely switch that one. So let's start. So what I did is I created a short summary about what the Azure community is doing. And one big part of our daily business, like I said, answering questions and creating content. But which kind of content? We're doing monthly meetup. That's something that some people are not knowing because they're just in the Azure community in Slack and throwing out an IGEL OS or IGEL UMS question maybe, or maybe answering the question by themselves. But we're also organizing on a monthly base meetup where we have topics covered from external vendors, from internal people, where we are explaining, teaching, maybe sometimes also showing actual use case of our product in our ecosystem.
Yeah.
So just in case, if someone is not knowing that, you don't have to be IGEL community member to be informed about that monthly meetups. You don't even have to be registered if you want to join. Just register for the meetup itself, and then if you are happy, just join us on the Azure community itself.
Hey Seb, let me set the stage a little bit as you continue to go through this. I'll give you a quick story. I met with several people recently about the Citrix user group community. And they said, okay, Andy, since you complain so much, how should we do this? And I just simply said, go talk to IGEL, go look at what IGEL is doing. They're a great example of how the company IGEL is investing in their community, and it reciprocates across the community. And it's the way to do it. And just kudos to Jed and Doug and you and the members for what you guys have done. And the main thing to me is your head and your heart was in the right place as to where it came from, not just trying to make it a business initiative.
Yes, and that's definitely important. Thank you for that feedback, Andy, because we're not trying to compete with any kind of support or something like that, right? We are just, sharing our love, I would say, or passion with our products with our members. And the members are giving also a few things back to us, not only giving answers, but also giving blog articles. So sometimes I will cover it a bit later on, but I definitely agree. It's something extremely unique at the moment. On the next stand, what we have is that's something that we are covering thanks to XenTegra on a bi-weekly basis on our podcast. It's the so-called Tech Tip Tuesday video. So just short 10 to 15 minute tutorial that we are sharing mostly on a weekly basis, sometimes on a bi-weekly basis, with some content coming from the Azure community, also from customer related situations where I'm still a little bit involved in, and where I'm seeing, hey, this topic is covered in our KB, yes, but maybe not in the depth that we need or that our customer base is needing. So that's something, if you do not know that, we have a website which is called videos.azurecommunity.com, where you can use any kind of content without being registered. So we are doing new content there, and if you need something or that you are seeing in the XenTegra podcast that we're not explaining enough, or you might need, let's say, a deep dive into a specific topic, just please reach out to me via mail or via Slack or via LinkedIn, and I would be happy to cover your topic with some other people.
So Seb, that one you've got the KB, which applies. You've got the blog that you write up that associates the video of Tech Tip Tuesday. which is really where you need to go to learn specifically and see what's going on. And then we cover it in this podcast with additional context from myself and Chris, where we kind of ask you questions and get even deeper into what you're showing in these videos.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something where we are learning also from you, from Chris and Andy, because the question you are asking mean that something wasn't covered enough maybe in the Detective Tuesday video. So I'm trying to adapt that on the fly more or less for the next recordings. Just in case, because that's something I didn't mention so often, but we have obviously an IGEL Academy. The IGEL Academy is not what we are doing in the Detective Tuesday video. There we are just covering one specific need, one specific topic without any transition from another one. The IGEL Academy really brings you from A to Z, from 1 to 100 and from 0 to hero in our whole ecosystem, with a really great red line between one topic to the other, going through every product that we have. The Detective Tuesday videos has definitely an absolute different kind of approach, and obviously you don't get any kind of certifications out of it. Just how to do that, let's get a video out of it.
Yeah, just a comment on Academy. So from my perspective, I always say my focus is on enabling our partners. And the way we view Academy is it was an opportunity as it got launched to sort of pull in the best practices, sort of the guidelines, the blueprints, if you will, for the IGEL technology, knowing that it's no way possible a certification course is going to be able to cover everything. And but at least having a baseline of understanding of sort of IGEL technology in and of itself at the basic and then the advanced level as you get into that, and then having a forum like the community where you can gather together and share really cool things. It's just this continuing education, and I think we've seen it certainly with the VMUGs and the CUGCs and stuff like that. That's kind of the general idea here is, but we would want partners in many respects. We actually require them to have that base level of certification, but that's just the starting point. Get definitely involved with the community, attend those monthly meetups, watch those Tech Tip Tuesdays, listen to our podcast, just maintain that knowledge if you really want to embrace IGEL and everything that we're about.
Exactly. I mean, sometimes we have to react quite quickly to, let's say, a pandemic situation, a new work from home step, new VPN connectivity or whatever. And if you think back about last year, we created, I said, more or less 2 weeks maybe after the first course hit us, to make an ICG tutorial online, thanks to Udo Jetschmanek or Lars Glöckner or Raphael Krappen for the German-speaking part of the pre-sales. We were able to deliver that content, like I said, in 2 weeks. Then we had a hardening guide, which came then out of it, because people were asking, now we have ICG in place, now we have a tutorial how to use it on our IGEL OS and on our ecosystem. Now we would like to make it secure. And that's something which is not part of the IGEL Academy, because we are touching operating system settings. We are touching services that are not sometimes part of IGEL, but more part of the Linux world. And that's where the Tech Tip Tuesday videos in monthly meetups definitely are, maybe I would say, more suitable than having just a KB article. That was just something I wanted to mention. I mean, even if most of our listeners who are joining the podcast are already knowing that we have the Tech Tip Tuesday videos, but I just wanted to throw it out just to repeat maybe.
So Seb, I think that's great, because no matter what it is in my life, whether it's fixing something in my car, whether it's changing out a filter on my my hood vent, I'd much rather just find a quick video that shows me what it is and how to do it and provides additional context than to go read an article on the topic. I almost get mad when I find an article I have to go try to decipher versus somebody just walking me through it on a video.
I agree. Same here. Sometimes it's for some comments, like I'm issuing in the comment line, I prefer to have a document, but when it comes to something related to the graphic user interface, I prefer to have a video, but that's something which is just not personal.
So I have to laugh here, Andy, with your comment there. I'm 100% there with you, because things I've learned, by just happenstance, right? If you ever go and you're getting your oil change in your car, and they're saying things like, your cabin air filter needs to be replaced. Oh, that's going to be $70. Like, oh, okay. And you realize after you just sort of do your own research that it's a $20 part and a 5-minute job.
Right.
And it's very easily done for cars that actually have a cabin air filter. And so I actually was at Jiffy Lube the other day getting a state inspection, and this guy had that tech came in and gave him that same recommendation. I was sitting there going, do I tell him, hey, just drive across the street to Advanced Auto Parts? And
Yeah. Yeah,
but YouTube has helped me figure out how to do all kinds of things with vehicles. It's amazing. So
pictures worth 1,000 words. I think a video with context added to it's worth 1,000,000 words.
Yeah. Well, I actually had a meeting yesterday. We're actually we were looking at a configuration we didn't know was technically maybe possible, but we've uncovered it now a couple times. With an Imprivata thing, and we're like, oh, let's investigate that further. And so I'm going to record a video and just sort of dig into a little bit more, and it could be a new thing that we develop jointly. So we'll see. Hopefully it will be. I have high hopes it can be done. So, but it's something that sort of popped out of nowhere, like, that's interesting. So stay tuned. Hopefully more to come on that.
Yep.
Cool.
All right, Seb, what else?
Hey,
we're on slide number 1 out of 6.
Yeah.
Sorry, we like to talk.
I'm going through it.
We're on slide number 1 out of 6, and we've got listeners. Now, you're
Yeah.
doing a good job communicating what it is you're covering, without a doubt.
Right. So then we have the guest meetup. So we are already covering them from time to time. Sometimes it's something that we are delivering only in private groups, but we have the so-called guest meetups where we have people from IGEL, like our CTO, joining, covering the yearly recap of what IGEL delivered to the market, what the outcome would be in 2022, etc., etc. So that's something that you will also get on the videos at IGELCommunity.com. Which is important to me, especially, that we gather feedback in the Azure community, and we are not only throwing it away then in the garbage and hoping that someone will read it. No, we will get it back into the company. So that's something where it's pretty unique, I would say, in the end user computing space. Maybe not unique, but quite rare, maybe, that your feedback have a direct influence of our product. It doesn't mean that everything that you are giving us will be implemented in a couple of days, a couple of hours, or a couple of weeks, maybe, but it will at least give a guidance to our product management, to our product marketing sometimes, that there is a specific need for a specific feature where there is not a big opportunity behind that. But if 100 people are asking the same thing, and they're maybe not an enterprise level customers, it gives us the ability to see that this specific feature might be interesting for other people. And that's something that we are doing by using the ids.agilecommunity.com website. You might not know that, but we have our feature proposal tool, which is not, and I can just repeat it, not an alternative to a feature request, not at all. It's just gathering feedback from you guys out there. If you want something that is not implemented in our Azure operating system and you're not be able to open a feature request, just throw out your ID there and people can upvote and downvote that feature. Other people from the Azure community from outside the world. And I'm bringing that feedback back into the company in a bi-weekly call with our PM. And there we have a task list where we are covering your questions, your needs, and trying to see if we can put it on the backlog. Doesn't mean it will happen every time, but you will see a bit later on that we have, I would say, a quite high amount of requests who went accepted.
I'll comment here about IGEL, the company in general, based on its size and position in the industry early on, and even still today. I think the highest compliment I could give IGEL as a company is you guys listen to your users. And because of your nimbleness, because of your size, because of your origin, because of your humbleness, you listen and adapt as your users, your customers, your partners need you to listen and adapt.
Yeah, I would second that. We're small enough now sort of understanding. When I came here, I had been with a company that grew rapidly. I would say tenfold in size from when I first started. And then coming here, trying to understand how things got done. Obviously, for those listening, our development is, primarily in Europe, in Germany. And so being American based here for Andy and I, certainly not Seb, but communication, right? There's a time difference. And so understanding sort of, how things get done, what's the process involved. What I've learned is that, in the world of product management, there's certain frameworks that people could follow. I got trained in a pragmatic marketing sort of framework where you get ideas like this, as Seb is talking about, and you kind of, there's one person asking is interesting. You get 10, you're like, oh, that's even more interesting. And then your gut kind of starts to tell you that maybe there's something more here. And you probably know that there's probably 30 people out there, maybe only 10 have spoken up. But having platforms like ideas at igel.community.com to kind of gauge and get people to vote on it, kind of gives you a sense of which direction the product should take. And then all that ends up lining up to where resources get assigned to make something happen. So keep the ideas coming. Certainly, if you have questions or have ideas and you're not sure if somebody else has asked about it, we can research that for you. This is not the only place you can throw out product ideas. There's other places we may be tracking that. But it's good to understand that the similar process I saw at my prior company is more or less being used. You kind of pull these things in, you look at the business case, and you figure out where your resources are, and then you start making some decisions. And but it is cool to be able to have a company that can innovate, sometimes rather quickly. Sometimes it might be a little slower than what people like, but
Chris, you did, I think, what's something that's a little bit of a fallacy, especially in the world of technology. You attributed it to size. I think it really matters on the origin of the company and who the company tries to stay true to themselves. Because in technology world, right, especially software, a change for one's a change for many, all at the same time. Mm-hmm. And that's really part of, I think, the German, the IGEL, it's in the DNA of the company, is to be someone who listens and really exploits for their own business needs, the needs of their community. But it starts with listening. Yeah.
What I meant by size, I guess, let me, any organization is going to have some disciplined process, typically that gets followed, and sometimes people may think that a large company, let's take I don't know, an IBM or something. Sorry guys, I'll just pick on you guys.
Let's use Dell. Let's use it. And here's
right. Yeah.
Well, let me influence what you're going to say slightly. Size creates arrogance. Arrogance creates stop listening, and you start telling people what they need, and that is wrong.
Right, and it could be that the person that's saying that may not necessarily know how to get things done internally. It could be a variety of things, right? I mean, but it could be the just general sense of, we'll move when we need to move. We're the elephant, right? Or there's somebody that says, what, I know and I believe in this. I'm going to try to do what I can to kind of make this happen, and just a matter of understanding how to navigate within that organization. And so. The less number of people you have, it can be an advantage. Sometimes not. It just depends. But I think from my experience, certainly here, there are some really, really cool people that definitely want to listen to what customers want. I think at the end of the day, the developers want to know that the product they're coding is making a difference, and it having an impact, right? And so being able to bring that to the development team, help them show that, hey, the time you're spent in that world of coding, it actually is translating to this, maybe it's a more streamlined thing at this industry or whatever it could be, or I don't know. It's just, that's the type of thing, be able to map it to, and then obviously give them that feedback when that thing that they built is having a true success. So
I break it down to this easy, and then we'll let Seb continue on here, but it's humility versus arrogance, and whether you're listening or whether you're telling people, and humility equals listening. And I think that says a lot about IGEL's roots and where it currently still is. Seb, as the guy with the funky Christmas tree on your head and humility, go ahead.
I'll just put the star in front of you now. So coming back to the presentation, I will go through quite quick right now. So last thing I just wanted to share on that slide is the IGELcommunity.com/HCL. So that's not the official IGEL Ready partner database, obviously, but if you have the feeling that you want to contribute about hardware that you tested on your own in your company, or maybe because you heard that something worked with IGEL OS 11, please feel free to put that on the hardware compatibilities website, because it's something that will help not only you, but other people looking for the same hardware and seeing if a specific Wi-Fi dongle or a specific Bluetooth chipset or specific hardware was tested by you with our IGEL OS. Since we cannot cover any device, it doesn't mean that it's fully featured and fully tested by IGEL, but it means at least that someone out there did test that device with an IGEL product and it went successful or not. Just wanted to share that, because it's extremely important to share that we are not only giving feedback to you, but we are also getting some feedback from the field. On the other hand, what we have is, because we are also wanting you to join and to influence our roadmap, we had the ability to involve a couple of people at the beginning of the year 2021 to join some early access programs. I will explain a little bit later on which one it was, but in the meantime, if you see the logo on the screen, if you are not seeing it, I will just say that it was the IREX 420 from N-Computing, so the Raspberry Pi device that we launched at the beginning of the year. That's something that we also covered in the IGEL community. So we sent out some devices, people could test that device, give feedback about features, missing features, wanted features, and we try to integrate it before we had the general release date.
Yeah, it's simply a message of you're not alone. You're in this together, and some of the people you're in it with, because it's the community, don't have initiatives that are outside the scope of community.
Exactly. So going then into the last slide of the general presentation. So we have the blog. From the blog itself, we are getting topics out of it that we are covering in the XenTegra podcast. But sometimes it's just a general documentation coming from an IGEL community member. That doesn't mean that this has to be an IGEL employee, not at all. It's just members who went through a specific process and wanted to share that document without having the need to create a KB article out of it with the world. So that's what we are covering also on the blog side from the IGEL community website. Then we already covered that in an earlier podcast. Since Slack is a black box where search engines do not have access, we have the IGEL archive where we are anonymizing the content coming inside of Slack and putting it in front of, let's say, Google or whatever search bot that we have. So if you're searching for a specific behavior on Google, start page, whatever your search engine is looking for, you will probably get a hit on the IGEL archive, where you can then be linked directly to the thread into the IGEL community. Then we have some news. I'm doing a monthly recap about what IGEL did, delivered, launch during that month, but that's it from that side. Just because it's something that I'm mentioning in every meetup, we have technology partners who went through the IGEL Ready program. That specific IGEL Ready partners are at the end of the process hitting the IGEL community, and we are creating specific channels for them. You are not invited automatically because we do not want to make publicity, advertisements. We are just saying, if you want to join, there is an announcement as soon as someone like N-Computing or Liquidware joins the IGEL community. Please join that specific channel, and there you will get insights about NFR kits, new documentation, new releases from that vendor without having the feeling that you will get a lot of publicity, even if they can do that in their own channel. Then going through the Insider program, which is a hidden program that I will cover a little bit later on an upcoming podcast. We have a yearly reward saying that people who posted a lot of things, answered a lot of questions, shared a lot of content are awarded to be insider. As an insider, you get specific access to early access programs, to private builds if you're on the NDA, access to internal protocol that we are exchanging with a PM. So you will get a huge amount of information, but will also be asked to give your feedback. So we had also a session with Jed Aris at the beginning of the year, or just let's say a short session with Matthias Haas, where he answered questions from that insider group. And that's something that I just wanted to share. Just join us on the 7,000. We are now 7,500. Just checked a couple of minutes ago. So if you want, and if you are not already, please join us on the Azure community. Now coming to the reports, because that's something that is pretty fun, I would say. If you think about what the Azure community is doing, you think about messages. And I'm just sharing a stat that I went through this morning. We have 29,000 messages posted in the public channel. So everything that you're seeing on the Azure community. It's always compared to the previous year. And if you think about what happened last year, it's fun to see that we posted even more than last year. We were expecting a little bit less because since the work from home period was, let's say, already initiated, already done, we wasn't expecting such a huge amount of messages, but still, we are answering your question, we are answering your need there. So just giving you a rough overview, 29,000 messages this year. Then, how many people joined the Azure community this year? We started at end of 2017, if I'm not saying something absolutely wrong. And just this year, so 2021, 2,200 people joined the Azure community just this year. So huge thank you to all of you who joined this year. You were not bots, I'm sure about that. You were actual people with a real body. So thank you for joining. Just in case if you're thinking if your, how to say it, the graph is going a little bit lower than last year. We had at September, October last year, a second COVID wave hitting Europe and the US. So we had, again, a huge amount of people join because they wanted to ask a question. But we also had 5,000 members until Doug gets 50. So we had a huge social media promotion for the Azure community. So a lot of people joined, especially for that specific situation. So that's the reason why we are still growing, but not as fast as last year. Then we have the total messages in public and private channels, just to give you a rough idea about what happened this year. If you think about private messages, so people asking for something which is not meant for being published on the general public channel, 96,000 messages were posted this year. So that covers all the messages exchanged in Slack. So thank you for all the people who spammed all our private mailboxes. It was really a huge amount of messages that we had to cover. Thank you very much for that.
And Seb, that's great that you're using numbers and now more numbers, but numbers to validate what looks and feels like it's being successful.
Yeah, exactly. At least we try to. So I'm coming to an end. At the last slide before the end, or let's say the previous one, time to first respond. It's something that Doug created in a report at the beginning of this year. So that means as soon as you ask a question and the Azure community has a new thread, how fast will you get an answer to that? Not saying that it solves your issue, not at all, but at least how fast will you get any kind of feedback from the Azure community? So in average, you can say in 8 minutes. Sometimes it's something between 5 minutes, or in the maximum, it was 15 minutes an answer to your question. And that's something that you can see on the graph. So you see the evolution but even during the year. Obviously, I'm not the only one. A lot of people are answering questions if I'm not there. And that's definitely a big kudo to anyone at IGEL, like Ron, like Chris Bates, like Josh, but also all the people outside of IGEL, all the standard members who are just there to helping all the IGEL community members and customers around the world. So big thank you to you. It's about 12 minutes average, 8 minutes to get an answer on the Agile community. So on the last,
I want to highlight something you just said. You talked about IGEL employees being active in the community. You talked about IGEL customers being active in the community. You talked about IGEL partners being active in the community. It's all of us together that's making the IGEL community work, including IGEL resources. And a lot of the vendors are basically taking their hands off their groups and just saying, okay, group, go fend for yourself. And while that may seem like the right strategy, it really isn't, because nobody's going to represent the group any better than the vendor themselves, and the vendor needs to play an active role.
Absolutely. I agree to 100%. So just coming now to the last slide, because we're running a little bit out of time, I just put it together some figures that where I have no reports out of it, where I had to count and create Excel files. So it's just really a raw view. So it's not something we're just looking extremely good. There is no graphs, but just sharing. We released 30 firmware this year. So if you think about IGEL OS, if you think that there is a firmware for OS 11, we released 30 firmware releases this year. That includes obviously also private builds, which are not public, but from the public ones, we released 6. So we have 24 who went the private build or retired ones. So it's extremely huge amount, I would say. That shows also the huge requirement that you have outside about Zoom VDI plugins, Teams optimization, new Citrix workspace versions who need to be integrated as fast as possible. That's a huge amount that I have never seen in the Agile history. 30 firmwares in a row in a year is something which is extremely rare, to be honest. And I would say it's the first time that we did so much firmwares. Even last year was not such huge.
So Seb, what you're saying is this stuff's moving really quickly, and it has to, because the industry is moving really quickly. All the more reason to have an active community.
Definitely, because every firmware, every private build brings also some risks, I would say. So there is no private build where I'd say use that for every purpose, but we have specific private builds covering a specific purpose, specific use case. And sometimes you just have the feelings that something is not going wrong or not going right, then just ask in the community and we can say, yes, that's something that we already heard a couple of weeks ago. And that's where we are exchanging our, let's say, our feelings. Well, then on the UMS side, we had 7 UMS releases. We had 4 IGEL Cloud Gateway releases. And coming back to the ids.igelcommunity.com feature proposal tool, we had 116 feature proposals. Approximately, I would say 15% of them were integrated or were put on the backlog. So we have still a huge amount of work there, but just be sure that your request is not throwing away. It's still on the list. We just have to focus on our new product that will come next year. So for the moment, we'll stay stuck at 15, but we expect more features to be included in the next OS ... version. Then Detective Tuesday videos, we had 31 this year, published between, I would say, approximately February to now. So that's something that costs a lot of time because we had to create scripts, we had to create the content, we had to publish them. So just saying that 31 videos are now waiting for your clicks. Then we had 3 early access programs. So we had the N computing, we had also a web app early access program, and the UX. So I'm just forgetting the user experience of our UMS web app and our upcoming UMS version, where we integrated the feedbacks of you guys into the product. We had 10 meetups. So more or less 1 per month. We had a short amount of time in summer where we made a short break because the topics were more or less done. And so we have 10 meetups this year. And last one, I'm just covering obviously the IGEL community sessions. We had 20 podcasts with you, Andy, and with you, Chris, this year, where at the beginning, Doug made the first one, and then you were so kind to invite me. So thank you, Andy and Chris, for inviting me to the IGEL community podcast. We have now 21 after today. So thank you very much for that. And I'm done right now.
Hey, Chris, I know you've been kind of quiet. Any thoughts or recaps on Seb's walk through the community update?
No, it is quite, when you have focus, such as a guy like Seb focusing on really investing in that, it just shows you IGEL's commitment to, this community and how serious we are that, we do take this. So we take the feedback, we provide this opportunity for people to continue that learning process, sharing their ideas. And it's fun. I mean, I think, you've heard it from Doug before. There's something to be said about having a community of people that are like-minded and are willing to share ideas together and learn from each other, right? I mean, I think if you look at that, the current scenario, right, we're all dealing with this log4j thing, right? I think everybody's sort of in it together to try to figure out how to mitigate this thing, if not eradicate it. But sharing that to yourself, I mean, doesn't really help the rest of the community. So if you have a great idea, you've got guys like Seb and others that are out there to kind of help flush it out if you don't want to necessarily post it publicly. And then, it might turn into a really cool blog or something, a video that the rest of the community benefits from. So I'm glad that IGEL, focused on that and put a resource like Seb on it. I wish I was more active in it, to be honest. I've had a plate full this year, but I do want to try to spend more time in the community there. So if you've reached out to me and I haven't responded, it's not because I don't like you.
Well, and Chris, I would echo those sentiments. I am no longer as technical as I want to be and can't
right.
be part of it. But I tell people all the time, hey, if I could go work for a company, I'd consider working for IGEL, and I'd like to be involved in their community. It's actually near and dear to who and what I am. It's just not what my daily responsibilities of keeping 55 employees employed is all about these days, but certainly something I see a ton of value in.
Yeah, no doubt. Truth be told, I'm still learning Slack. I'll raise my hand and say I'm not a jet ninja on that one yet, jet fighter pilot, but my colleague Ron there is very active in it. So we sort of balance each other out. I'm checking on stuff over here. He's working on that, and we kind of help collaborate. So it is nice to have a teammate like Ron. And obviously Seb is out there responding and that type of thing. So we all try to work to make sure that if somebody does post a question, it doesn't go unanswered for very long. So, but Seb, that's great. I'm excited. I will say, for those that, if you are in Academy, one thing that we've also done is basically take links and point them at these tech tip videos. So if you, and just post them in there as well. So there's multiple places to get to the same content, since it's all basically coming off of YouTube. But IGEL Academy is a place not only for you to get certified, but you'll see links to these other tech tip videos. So sort of one place to go with your IGEL learning. So, and certainly if you want to share a video or whatever, and you think it's worthy, there is a place to do that, certainly in the community, but Academy is a great place because multiple people will be able to see what you've done, and we're happy to post it for you if you don't want to do it yourself. So,
and also reach out to one of us if you want to join us and have be part of one of these podcasts / videos. Love to have some outside influence to add to our current set of things we talk about. Well, guys, I'm sorry for being late. I think we got through this, and it was a great conversation as always. I wish you guys Merry Christmas and other holidays that we'll be celebrating throughout the course of the remainder of the month and the first of the year. Just really thankful to have you guys doing this with me. And I'll give you a quick note. We've got a little over 1,200 downloads of our podcast so far and growing. I'd love for that to be 12,000, but I think over time it'll continue to grow, and we are providing additional pathways for people to learn and stay up to date with IGEL and its technologies.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for the effort. Truly.
Yeah, looking forward to some new stuff we're going to be doing in 2022. So thanks, Andy. Appreciate it. Thanks, Seb.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Wish you all the best for your families. See you.
See ya.